How are you doing?
Good, good.
Do you want me to do the sharing of the slides, or are you going to do it?
I was thinking I could try to pull it off. I have it up. Sometimes it's hard to do both, but if I share just the tab, I can do everything pretty easily.
Yeah, sometimes I pull it off into its own window and share that window, but you can do it either way.
How's that?
Yeah, looks good. Hey, I've been doing a little playing around with Gemini, and they've updated their model, and it's a lot better than it used to be. It might be better than ChatGPT now. So I think that's included. You can get the advanced features included in the nonprofit workspace pricing model. So that's just something to remember for your clients to let them know that.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, with the nonprofit Google for nonprofits, I believe it's business standard package, and I believe Gemini's is included.
Yeah, it is. It's the Gemini Advanced is what it's called. That's what's included. Uh, so so is that Notebook LM as well. So,
So I definitely want to just make it very informal, Roy, where you and I are both speaking to each slide.
okay.
And so I'll talk and I'll always leave it open to you to add in things, or if you want to kick off a slide, you can start talking before me. You know,
Okay.
either
No
way.
problem.
Very,
How's
very
my
interesting.
audio? Is that my audio okay?
Yeah, it is.
All right.
I probably should get my AirPods. It's a little late for that. I'll just talk to the computer here.
We
Hello.
recorded another chair of honor video this morning too.
Oh,
Uh,
good.
yeah.
This time, unlike the last one, I didn't invite everybody to the last special topic, so that's why we had limited showing. We should have some people showing up for this. I had some people accepted at least.
Good.
What's going on?
Hey, Toby, how are you?
I'm good. How
Toby.
are you?
You've been busy and productive. That's good to see with your emails I'm seeing.
Yeah, trying, we got um again the subject of liability insurance came up again today, and I don't I don't have an answer because everyone I've talked to says we don't do that.
What type of liability insurance are you looking for? General liability or errors and omission or
No, I
uh,
think general liability errors. I'm not overly concerned about errors and omission. Maybe not smart enough, but I like in a real estate firm I worked in, there were errors and omissions. But when an organization, this is just Toby's small thoughts, right? With respect to errors and omissions, when the organization owns the funds, right? yes, they're donated funds, but the organization owns those funds. So, errors and emissions play a less risky role in that aspect. But when, like, for my property management company, I don't own those funds. They're in a trust account. So having those audited is pretty critical. So that's just my thoughts.
So we're going to have a very informal discussion here. Rick and Toby, Roy and I are going to be the primary speakers, but feel free to interject if there's something that comes to mind that could be applicable. And we only have 6 slides. So, we're going to take you through this. We have a busy slide here about the methodology and then the key components. We have a 4-step process. Then we have a case study with tree recovery out of Hawaii, Levy Cornelia, and then a conclusion slide. So it's pretty quick here. And who do we have here? Scott Fight. Thanks for joining. He's getting started here in a moment.
I was like, nobody commented. I said, now you can hear me. I said, the only reason why I joined is because Roy's talking.
I don't
There
know
you
about that.
Is that a master's print behind you?
It is.
Look at you. I'm sure with your localness, you've probably been able to go to the masters, huh?
I've been a bunch of times, and this is a story for another day, but I'm also banned for life.
Oh shit.
Man.
Yeah. So I ran afoul of the powers that be in Augusta, and it had nothing to do with me. It was all my dad. My
Oh no.
my 85-year-old dad had his cell phone in his bag and didn't realize it was there, and the tickets were in my name, so I get to suffer for a lifetime ban.
Oh my gosh. Woo. Well, you were happy for Rory to win then?
I was, because he supported the PGA Tour through all the defections from the guys that went to the Live Tour to chase the money. So
Good point.
yeah.
Guess we'll start another recording on top of all this technology. We're going to try to break the system here. We got Gemini, Fathom, and Google Meet recording. It should be good. Well, with 4 minutes after, I'd like to welcome everyone to a special topic for the nonprofit leaders. This is the strategic clarity system. And I'd like to welcome my co-facilitator, Roy Adams, who's a longtime strategist who I served with in Strategic Command. And he's a 94 grad of Alabama. And he knows a lot of West Pointers. And sometimes I think he's a West Pointer because he knows more about West Point than me. And he is also executive director now of Chairs of Honor. And he's working on we'll announce that one day, but he's working on a very unique concept on helping people in midlife transition to a place of passion and unconventionally address that passion through purpose and mission, and sometimes it becoming a nonprofit. And he's going to tell his story about how he transitioned out of the military, but he's also trying to help others. And I think he's really found an unconventional way that really applies to many of us. So thanks for joining us, Roy.
Yeah, thank you. It's great to be here.
Well, welcome everyone. Today we're discussing a strategic clarity system, and this is a methodology based on, I guess, years of military experience, but it was really created out of immediacy. And I called up Roy and I said, hey, I got a strategic planning session coming up. I don't want to get so deep into strategy that we lose sight of like solving some problems here. I don't want to admire the problem. I don't want to polish a war plan for years. I don't want to be one of those planners that's in the planning cell and never executes anything. And he knew me as a strategist who was also a future operations guy. And so that meant that I always had to take war plans off the shelf and actually take a section out of the war plan and actually execute it. So he knew exactly what I was thinking and said, have you heard about Wardley mapping? And I said, yes, only one time through you. He said, well, let's apply Wardley mapping to this specific problem that you have. So today we're going to talk about, what is strategic clarity system? What is it based on? And then have a few case studies. And I think it'll be illuminating to you. Yes, some of the charts are eye charts, but we're trying to take you through a complex topic and make it simple but practical for you. And we also want to have some kind of science and some kind of methodology behind what we're doing, because I was on call the other day and I really appreciate mystics and all that, and the spiritual. I mean, I'm married to a spiritual woman in Cynthia, the Reverend Dr. Cynthia Lindenmeyer, and this gal said, I help people with strategy and it's all intuitive. And I was like a little, I had a really bad taste in the back of my mouth. I was like trying to keep from, dry heaving, like something was about to come up. Because as a strategist, it's like I appreciate strategy, but I also need to have some methodology behind it. And so we're open to comments throughout. This is a very informal discussion. People will listen to this recording because I'm going to build a course on strategic clarity system in the nonprofit leaders school community. But this is an open discussion and we do want feedback. And if it's not methodological enough or not scientific enough, or it's too practical or it's too simple, yeah, we want to hear that too. But we think it's a good balance between having a methodology, having some simple steps. And really, my tagline is I think we can create a strategic framework for a small business or nonprofit in hours and days versus weeks and months. And that's really the purpose of this. And strategy should be the base of everything. So with that said, the Lighthouse provides, our clarity and direction in these unturbulent times. And that's why the Beacon Foresight logo is very applicable for this. Roy, is there anything else that you want to have said in this teed up slide here?
The only thing I would add is that I think almost everyone on the call has some experience in the military, so strategy is probably not something that is unfamiliar to you. But in many cases, I think people think about strategy and their eyes begin to glass over, and they think it's a long, drawn-out process. And what benefit do I get out of doing strategy? And what we hope that this system does is that you'll see it really begins with the organization's why. Why do they exist? What is the purpose? And then we help them illuminate through not a very long discovery process, but just through a process of asking some questions, really try to ascertain what value they're bringing. So to the marketplace or to their constituencies, and then that then becomes the basis of their movement. And when we start thinking about strategy should be the guidepost and the guide rails for movement. And whatever the movement is, we've now demonstrated in two case studies, we've identified where movement had not been thought about in certain areas, and then we were able to illuminate those areas through this process and structure to be able to give them a pathway forward as they continue to do their day-to-day work. So I think that's the other thing, is that strategy should not be so overwhelming that it takes you away from your day-to-day work of what you're doing as a nonprofit or even as a small business. But specifically, I think we've adapted this to be for nonprofits, and it's critical, I think, to note that this can be for any scale of nonprofit, but we think we can deliver more value to those that are in the process of moving, like I am, out of chairs of honor, out of the startup bootstrap phase into how do I grow into something that is going to be sustainable and deliver at scale what I'm trying to do. Not necessarily, you know, a $2 or $3 or $4 million operation, but something that is a little bit smaller in scope and scale. So that's the only thing I would kind of illuminate in the introduction right here.
Yeah, and strategy is supposed to be resilient and adaptive to ever-changing times, and that's why there's a why of movement. We'll talk about that. So, what is the strategic clarity system? It all stems from this why of purpose here in the middle, because mission must drive everything, and then what Roy said, a why of movement, because your environment is always changing. This circular model, a lot of people will look at this slide right here and they'll just say, I quit. This is an eye chart. I hate this already. Punch me out. Eject, hit the eject button of the fighter jet. We got Bill here, our flyer, Navy flyer, so we can talk about, hitting the eject button. But this strategy is relatively simple, and Wardley created it based on two components. One was Sun Tzu's 5 factors. So you have purpose, landscape, climate, doctrine, and leadership. And he was a CEO. He said he had imposter's syndrome, and he went to the library, and the librarian said, why don't you read Sun Tzu? He read every version and every interpretation of Sun Tzu, and he found these 5 factors to be applicable because the environment's constantly changing. You have to have a mission. You have to understand your landscape, the climate of your organization, the doctrine that you're using to either make money or deliver your services, and understand the leadership component. So Sun Tzu's 5 factors were paramount. And then John Boyd's OODA loop, which again, the fighter pilot in the room, Bill Phillips, will love OODA loop because if you're in a dogfight, and that's what John Boyd was, a fighter pilot, he was constantly trying to figure out how do you dogfight better. And you observe, you orient, you decide, and you act. So all you got to do is watch a dogfight, and you see that they're doing OODA loop pretty constantly up there when they're trying to find the enemy, trying to decide what to do, orient themselves, and then act with their trigger or maneuver. And so between these two, we find out kind of where the organization is in this model, and then we start to track them around, and we see what elements are missing and how to address those. Roy?
Yeah, the only thing I would like to clarify and add to this is that a lot of people misapply. They won't misapply Sun Tzu's 5 factors, but they will misapply the OODA loop. I kind of fancy myself as an expert in John Boyd because I've built my whole strategist career around his theories. And most of the business world has taken the OODA loop and made it a cycle. They've made it what kind of Vince began to describe, which is, go observe the environment around you, then orient to decisions that you could make, and then make a decision based on an analysis of those particular decisions. And then you make the decision and act, and then you re-observe. That's actually completely backwards from what John Boyd showed and what he wrote about. But really, this is not a cycle, it's a system. And when you think about strategy and as a nonprofit, you should always be observing and oriented. You should always be looking for how the environment may be shifting and changing. And the way you build that orientation system matters. And that's why we take a look at the value chains within an organization, specifically what value are you providing with your programming or services, and we help you develop that orientation system to be able to observe the climate and the landscape. So it actually starts with that orientation phase. And we did begin to look at, this is where Wardley may have gotten it a little wrong with this graphic created, but that's okay. And that's the only nuance that I would say is that we start by helping you define the value that you bring to the constituency that you serve. And then we take a look under the engine bay there, and we begin to look down deeper into what's not as visible but just as important, like things like your support systems or your particular funding systems and things like that. They all lead up to what you are actually doing on a day-to-day basis. So that's the only nuance that I would provide with regard to this particular graphic. When Vince talks about accelerate timeline, typically when I did this in the military, this would take months to a year of analyzing a particular situation, going through and scoping down every particular contingency that could happen, and just would take forever. What I think we've figured out, and at least in a couple of case studies we've done this with, is that when you start with the value chains and you begin to provide that clarity in the way we apply this, as you'll see soon in the landscape map, and I want to clarify that that's what Wardley really began to bring to fruition. It wasn't just a bunch of bullets and this is your strategy, but actually a map that you can navigate on, that you can use to say, this is where I want to move a particular part of my system organization into a better position. That starts with what I described as that value chain, and that's why we can accelerate the timeline, is because we can hone in on the very important components of this system in your particular organization to be able to then accelerate into providing you a strategic map, and not necessarily a big drawn out text-based strategy, so to speak, that you might see in other forms. Sorry, Vince, go on.
No, that's great. I always think there's a great yin and yang between me and you about you going a little bit deeper, and I think that's greatly appreciated. And I think when you and I do planning for other organizations, that's appreciated. We do integrate IPRs into the planning process. We keep the leader foremost. We look at stakeholders, and this is really an integrated approach between the planning process and the execution. So I like it. Next slide. So the key components, we tried to create a 4-step process to strategic clarity system. And you can never get away from your mission-driven environmental scan. And this is like your why a purpose, your mission, like what is it that your mission, why do you exist? And let's review that. And then your why of movement, what specific community impact are you motivating current initiatives? What's your programming? A lot of times people are like, they'll come to me as a nonprofit advisor. Jeremiah, thanks for joining us from Hawaii. And yeah, a lot of the clients in Maui Community Foundation, they say, we want grants, we need money. And it's like, well, do you have any programming? That's your why of movement. What's your purpose? What's your mission? You know, you're taking them back. So the strategic clarity system is a way to, let's go back to fundamentals briefly. Let's, in hours or days, or, you know, let's get back to the basics of what it is your nonprofit is oriented around. And that's why the first step here is these 2 critical elements in the environmental scan. And also, what does the industry do? We have a more detailed, you know, steps and things that we do within mission-driven environmental scan. It's like, what does your industry do? What do competitors do? What is their model? What are the blue forces? What are the red forces? Like, what are the environmental factors working against you? Like we did in Hawaii with Jeremiah, you know, what's a SWOT analysis? Or with Toby, you know, what are the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? To try to do a little bit of that. So we have that basic mission-driven environmental scan. And then we get into step 2. Roy, can you take it from there?
Yeah, sure. So I think what's important with here is that we'll help you identify what we're going to call this client journey, which you may already have defined, but really, what are the things that you need to have in order to deliver that particular client journey or service journey? And that's what is called the value chain analysis. And it goes from, as you'll see on the left-hand side of that chart there, which is the map, things that are more visible to those outside of your organization to things that are almost invisible. You know, things like your internet service, your software. Those things are all invisible to people on the outside, but they're still very much a part of the value chain analysis that we would do for an organization. What helps identify is dependencies, and the dependencies are where we can look for opportunities, because one component of the value chain may be dependent upon one or two or three or more components that are less visible or more visible. It just depends on each system, and then they exist in time and space, whether they're present or future, and in their cycle of maturation, if you will, where they are in the maturation process, from something that you just strictly invented that nobody has invented, and we'll call that Genesis on the left, all the way over to something that's a commodity, that anybody can buy, anybody can get, that type of thing. And so every part of the value chain exists somewhere in that evolution, and we help navigate and help you look at that and see where there might be opportunity, which is then step 3 of the strategic landscape mapping, which we're kind of melding these two together because they kind of go together. And what we have been able to apply with this system to a nonprofit is to look for potential opportunities for strategic movement and where you could take movement based upon where that value chain falls out in the analysis. And you may have more than one value chain, by the way. You may have several different programs or several different services that all deliver different things. So you may have different value chains for each one, and that's okay. So the strategic opportunities, as you can see, the red arrows really look at where you can move something that is currently where it states in the maturity cycle and say, is it appropriate to move it to the right? Is it appropriate to move it from something that might be Genesis or custom built all the way into something that might be a product that you could buy off the shelf or even to a commodity level? So that's really what we can do to help identify that and create a strategic plan around this landscape.
Thanks, Roy. And we'll talk about some specific examples, but the value chain, again, that's your unique user, what their needs are, and then what capabilities the nonprofit brings to serve those needs. So it's user, needs, capabilities, and then that transfers into what you're seeing here is the Wardley map. And when you map it, then you see opportunities. One other thing we're going to provide is a playlist for Wardley describing his Wardley mapping. It's about 6 videos. It'll be part of the training in the nonprofit leader classroom, and it allows you to do this yourself. You don't need, 2 strategists that used to be in the Army that did this for many years to do strategy. This is a self-serve thing, and you can create your user needs, capabilities, and then map it across time, whether it's a beginning technology or it's evolving. And we found with one of our examples that we needed lots of certified trainers, and then another one of our case studies we found, oh wow, there's a retail application here, you have a potential line of revenue. And while the leaders know that, we actually demonstrated it to them by proving it on the Wardley map that, hey, yeah, this is a valid line of revenue. Finally, you're going to get those strategic insights. You're going to get, effects-based transition, so you can phase out things that can happen now, that can happen 3 months from now, 6 months from now. Now you're already creating an effects-based phasing so that you can now have a year-long strategy and you can phase in things based on effects occurring. And then you demonstrate the clear milestones and then progress to stakeholders. So our first case study, and thanks Jeremiah for being here with us. So you can chime in. This is an informal discussion. We'd love to have people talk or chime in. Was Tree Covery Hawaii, and they're a current client for Maui Community Foundation, and we were able to implement strategic clarity system to really bring out things that they're already doing. Now, the two co-founders of Tree Covery are very successful multi-million-dollar kind of guys that have done many serial entrepreneurial adventures. And Tree Covery is a passion project for them, almost a hobby, but it is ever consuming their time. And so Maui Community Foundation was retained to help with strategy, operations, and execution and compliance. Thank you, Ricky, for attending the compliance officer with Beacon and Maui Community Foundation. And so we were retained to help them as a micro staff. And with their expertise in so many entrepreneurial endeavors, we were able to validate a lot of what they do gut wise. You know, I made the joke earlier about the mystic lady who said, "Oh, I do strategy intuitively. I don't have a methodology." And I both threw up a little bit in my mouth. And what that means is these guys really do intuitively run a great organization. And I believe that Strategic Clarity System and Wardley Mapping was able to validate 95% of what they were already going to do. But there was a slight 5% that's like, hey, this is a really cool kind of initiative you may want to consider. And it's an ongoing process. We did apply the value chain mapping, and we identified 4 interconnected pillars. The re-greening of Maui, and this is based on the situation that the fires of Lahaina of August of 2023, now well over 18 months, if not 21 months ago, and Maui is still struggling with recovery. Tree Covery was also involved in saving the banyan tree here, which is pictured. And so they're re-greening, restoring 500 acres of wildfire impacted land by planting 150,000 native trees. They're reshading and increasing the long-term tree coverage in priority conservation zones. They're feeding by improving food security, by integrating food production with conservation. And these are obviously through fruit trees and other vegetation that produce food. And then there's the organizational capacity pillar, which is strengthening their operational efficiency for program expansion. And then through the IPRs with the client, we learned about the spiritual component, about the Hawaiian values. We learned about the jobs, workforce development, economic development component that we can integrate. And those became cross-cutting functions. And we learned about, hey, if we can figure out carbon credit integration, then that could be a profit center. If we could figure out the tree plotter standardization, we can have people buy and sponsor trees in Hawaii, and that is their tree by grid coordinate. And then finally, they have a unique soil composition where they have to buy bagged soil at the typical hardware store. And it's like, hey, why don't we get our own peat moss from Canada, and why don't we build our own soil that we can then use to plant our own trees, but we can also bag this soil as a retail profit line of revenue with tree covery soil. So all of these initiatives are moving forward, and it's really good to see the clarifying nature of this kind of strategy, where it's like we thought we had a good thing going and this validated it. Anything on this, Roy?
I don't think so. I think it was really first of all, the Tree Covery and the Maui Foundation provided a very robust strategic document that they had kind of already done a lot of analysis. And what we did was just try to glean out the value chains from that across these 4 pillars and identify where we had cross pollination, if you will, across the pillars to help maybe identify some potential opportunities. I like as Vince said, I'm not sure we discovered anything new that they didn't already know. I think we just were able to frame it in such a way that it becomes very simple for them to communicate, especially with potential foundations and donors that to support maybe one or two of the particular areas that they're addressing right now. Around some of the technology that they're looking to try to create, things like that. So, it's great that they provide such a good bit of data. But as you think you'll see in the next case study, we didn't have a lot of data from them. We just had really some interactions from Vince and working with them as his client, but not a lot of self-analysis that has been done as was done by the Maui Foundation and the Tree Recovery Project or Tree Recovery Project.
Thanks, Roy. And Jeremiah, you were really up close and personal to both working with the client and kind of observing this process kind of unfold in action. Jeremiah, do you have any comments?
Aloha, everyone. Thank you. I'm in a new office, so I don't know if you can hear me okay?
Sound loud and clear.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you for having me. What I wanted to share with you about tree recovery is, as Roy said, they have a lot of content. As Vince said, both of them on their own accord have been very successful in their own careers. And this definitely is a passion process for them. In fact, Wayne told me last week that he burned up all of his PTO at the hotel he works at because he's always doing stuff for tree recovery. And that attests to how much passion it takes to run like a very successful nonprofit. What I wanted to share with you is that one of the things that MCF, Maui Community Foundation, have found through working with both of them is that, they have so many things going on and they're always doing stuff. And it's so hard for us to keep up kind of every time we have a meeting with them to figure out what new things they have. And I feel like this strategy thing was really good because, in order for this to be successful in any nonprofit, you can do all these good things, but if the world doesn't know that you're doing it, it just doesn't matter, right? So one of the great things about this is that after they have it on paper, this is something that they can share with their board. They can feel very internal pride, and get support from. But also, most importantly, in a strategy plan, as probably Vince already mentioned, is to have stakeholders or collaborators that are attached to the plan and have a little buy-in to what's happening and developing in this good community project. And I think that's really, really important because in terms of longevity, like, when we're running on the treadmill, we're training for a marathon or whatnot, at some point we're asking, why am I doing all of this? And yes, initially I had all this passion to do this, but like that why has to come back to the strategy plan that gives and provides you that long-term objective, that 5-year plan that says, this was our vision, this is what we want to do. Oh, by the way, I got a phone call, somebody wants me to do this, and it sounds really fun and interesting, but does that serve according to what the long-term plan is? And this is a great thing that I think every nonprofit should have, because they can get back on the path to make sure it's carefully aligned with the direction you want to go to. So I just think this is a wonderful tool for other people in the community, for stakeholders, for collaborators, future donors, of course. And I'm really great that I was able to work with Roy on this. Thank you, Roy.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, this allows a framework like this allows you now to have a master calendar. It allows you to now have a grant toolkit, readiness toolkit for grants. It allows you to have a framework so your grant writer loves you more than is more disgruntled with you because you didn't give them this strategic framework. So by doing just a little bit of strategic clarity exercise for your own nonprofit, you're really going to help out your entire organization. Let's go to the next case study. So Libby Cornelia Hooves to Healing is a horse ranch in North Florida, specifically Plant City. And it's a ranch that is very new in its development. They just got their 501c3. They're getting PATH certified, which is the equine assisted psychotherapy certification. They're hiring the people, and they're trying to really start to assemble what is it this ranch is going to do, how is it going to look, and how are we going to function, how are we going to make enough money to be profitable, to be in the black, not to be running, in the red and, causing a deficit here. We got to make money, and we got to do it quickly. What's the best programming to start focusing on to get to the black and be profitable? So really, this was the impetus that made me call Roy and say, Roy, I need something quick. I need something valid. I need a methodology. And I was going to do a one-day on-site strategic conference with them. And so we created their pillars, as you can see, with equine assisted therapy, which is services for veterans, special needs clients, and emergency responders. The traditional psychotherapy component, which they have a welcome center with 3 offices, and they like to have integrated licensed therapeutic services. Let's call that talk therapy. So that's 2 humans, traditional psychotherapy. And then finally, event venue operations, where they're going to create sustainable revenue through facility rentals. So think weddings, big parties, Kentucky Derby party, Easter get together, any kind of event venue where someone wants to bring their family out for a family reunion or a wedding or anything like that. So those are the 3 big pillars that we created based on, and they kind of knew they wanted to do that, but then we needed a map to really see where the opportunities were and what the critical events were. For example, a certified PATH instructor for the horses, a certified event planner for the weddings, and to really start a licensed practitioner for the talk therapy, which they're still out looking for that person to do that aspect. And then we were able to phase in these program offerings over time, where we're going to sprint on the equine assisted therapy. We have the horses, we have the PATH certified instructor. Let's focus on that and let's get revenue. So with these pillars, we're also able to now focus our search on grants. And there is the sustainable architecture or agriculture piece there. It's not numbered, but it's a way to get green belt certification. It's not really going to be a sustainable, hey, we're going to sell fruits and vegetables at the local, flea market, which they had one. I drove by it. But it's more like getting the green belt tax incentive of about 18 to 24,000 a year, where they're green belt, they don't have to pay taxes. So it's almost like getting homeland or homestead exemption on an entire farm, and that's important. That's another 24,000 that they can use operationally. So we looked at, what they could do, and we created a roadmap. This also helped them with their master calendar. They do have a Kentucky Derby festivity coming up in May for a big fundraiser, and they're able to start really planning out the calendar and having a master calendar, and then looking at their programming, looking for key grants. Roy, did you have any insights while helping this client?
The only thing I don't know how the client is going to aptly, apply a lot of what the work we did. That's really right now between them and Vince. But what I thought as I did the work with Vince and went through all the data and began to map things out, is that there's opportunities that are actually, as we identified on the strategic map, there's things they could do today, but then there are things that they want to do, but don't have the resources yet to do them. And so we were able to help them, I think, prioritize what it is they should take action on now. And that becomes their why of movement at this point in time, which they can then shift as the resources become available. But now they have a map that shows when they do get the resources, I can then apply it to this other effort that will help move a particular component of the value chain to a more, instead of custom built or something like that to a more standardized product that might be more efficient or provide a revenue source for them as well. That's what I think. I helped. I think that's the one way we help them with this map.
Yeah, more specifically, the technology that they require to schedule clients with the horses, to schedule clients for talk therapy. We realize they need a technology for scheduling resources on the ranch to be most efficient. And if they can tackle that earlier than later, it's going to really help them grow. So we're already seeing into the future and seeing, hey, we really got to tackle this technology piece and how you're going to schedule folks for horses, how the vet's going to come see them, and what your resource calendar looks like. Like, hey, you can't schedule that weekend. We have a wedding coming up. So they have competing demands for limited resources. How do we do that? And so now we have a good 91 classmate, Scott. Scott Hooper's out in Reno, Nevada, and I'll be taking this client out to see Scott and Kay Hooper, to see they're about 2 years ahead in their Horsemanship for Heroes nonprofit, and they have all the technology and they're scheduling very efficiently. And so we're going to go out and we're comparing ourselves, a new nonprofit, to an industry standard, a nonprofit that's already working. We're going to capture those best practices and accelerate the growth of Lee Cornelia so that they can get those technology pieces integrated, and then they have that sight to the future, and they're more commodity driven, where they have a set way of doing things. So thanks, Roy. We're at the wrap up stage of what strategic clarity system can bring to action. We'd love to open it up to the floor, but the bottom line is we believe that this system could bring clarity to leadership, to not only board and staff, but just execution all the way down to grant writers, where they see a strategic framework and they have like insight into what the priorities are and what is prioritized over other things. They have a way to show a placemat. So this can then be translated into a visual where you show the pillars of your organization, how they carry weight to the organization, and how stakeholders are affected. So you can have a placemat that you slide over to someone while having a coffee or a fundraising call with a stakeholder that says, hey, this is exactly what we do. So you can create a one pager out of this, and it can be a compelling one page placemat. It can really convey and articulate exactly what it is you're doing and why you need their support. And then as the environment change, it's very adaptive because you have the value change map. And if the environment changes, you have now a resilient, adaptable strategy that can move with the time. That's that why of movement. And it's sustainable. So you can phase in implementation. You don't have to bite off the whole elephant at one time. You can say, hey, that's a great idea, but let's phase that in 6 months from now. So Roy and I, we're going to create the course that's going to be up very quickly. We're going to have an outline on how you could take the course in the nonprofit leader discussion area on the school community, and walk yourself through helping your own nonprofit really gain strategic clarity. And there'll also be the YouTube videos directly from Wardley. Really, none of this is copyrighted or trademarked. We want you to be able to serve yourself and help your own organization with this. But we can also, on taking action today, you can also schedule like an assessment, and really we can talk to you about your organization's unique challenges and opportunities and see if strategic clarity would be something that you want to pursue with help. And then we could help with a board presentation where you can after that call, we could have the board either consider that. And then we also have the white paper with more detail where you can read more about it, and that'll also be included in the course. and then there's my email. So based on this conversation, I know that some light bulbs went off. Does anyone have any insights or want to share? And I'm happy to go back to any slide that you want to point out when you're talking. Bill, how does this resonate with your experience in the Pentagon? How do you like that OODA loop?
For the record, I just have to say I've never liked the OODA loop stuff because the reason why is not why the information is presented, but because people try to make it so complicated. It's like, hey, this is really simple, right? If you take it from a fighter pilot perspective, I have to, I follow the observe. I'm not observing 50 actions, I'm observing one, and then just, I always forget one of the acronyms, but anyway, and then you have to decide and, and, and um, uh, act. Sorry, but yeah.
Bill, I know you weren't a fighter pilot, but you had the reconnaissance mission. I'm sure you were doing some OODA loops out there.
Yeah, I want to make sure you got me now. I think my microphone cool. Yeah, I mean we trained to, we look like a fighter. We just did an airborne electronic attack, but we still had the pointy nose and didn't have a gun, but had air-to-air missiles. So it's all happening so fast though. It's like as anything changes, you're adapting. So you're observing the environment, right? I need to orient my position in a geometrical piece of sky to react because the enemy has a vote. Make that decision and then act on it. So I think like I've already been doing this because we put together, this KFG project thing is only, not even 2 months old, and we've already adapted our strategy to, hey, this is our main value proposition. This is what is getting the most attention. We're going to focus our efforts here, and then kind of tier the offerings that we have based on, we not trying to give everything all at once. So, I was just looking at, I got to change my my pitch deck, and we were doing this real time and not finished yet, right? We got a board meeting coming up on, on Thursday, and already pitching some, or catching them up to some of the recent developments and why we're going to focus on certain areas. So I use it. I use the OODA loop. I think it's applicable here, and I've been doing it and not even realizing it because we've flexed based on certain things, and we're constantly flexing, but still trying to have the best product that we can offer and not look like we're kind of, constantly orienting and deciding and acting because based on the environment.
Yeah, that prioritization effort, Bill, that you're doing is really based on a law of money phasing, it's called, where when you're bootstrapping, you have to phase in capability as you get the money. And you are bootstrapping a nonprofit. And so you're doing very well in the fact that you're looking at what can you get to market immediately and how does that happen? And let's focus on that first, and let's generate some revenue, and then let's phase in the next capability that the user needs. So you're looking at that user. It's the active duty cancer fighter. It's the veteran cancer fighter. It's the military family member cancer fighter, and it's their unique needs to get holistic health services, which may not be offered by the military hospital, the VA, or civilian hospitals. It may be a holistic element that helped save your life through your determination and your belief and your action. And so now you're paying that forward. And so you have to phase in some capability. And so that's what you're doing. And that's what OODA Loop does. And that's what strategic clarity does, along with, the Sun Tzu 5 factors. So this is bringing, by you listening to this presentation, this is bringing you clarity, because you're like, you know what, I feel right about phasing this in the way that I'm doing it. And then as the money frees up, as you prove what you're doing and you have proof of principle, then you can go out for greater funding, because people say, you know what, this thing is wired tight. They have it right. They figured it out, and they're going to be, they need funding. And so you're going to become a rainmaker with being able to communicate that, and you will garner the 10, the 20, the $50,000 checks, because you're able to communicate it in a way that is effective. Anyone else?
I just wanted to add one other thing too, is that and this is what completely surprised me, is I'm bringing on these coaches. I've got 12 coaches now, and some of them are business owners. They work for large organizations and make several $100s an hour, and they're like, we're going to work for you pro bono until you bring in money. And like, okay, you're prioritized as we start raising money, because the whole idea is paying for coaching at a nonprofit rate. But I have this amazing caliber of coaches that are like, we believe in you, so we're going to work for free until you get this thing going, which is amazing.
That's fantastic. Thanks for sharing all that, and good luck with the board meeting Thursday. I'll be there.
Yeah.
Well,
Thanks. And Ricky.
Scott, any insights? I know that, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I thought it was really helpful. You know, I think, you know, you use the term loop, and I look at this. You know, we're constantly evolving and every day looking at new opportunities, and so, you know, for us, you know, it doesn't, we don't necessarily change what we're offering on a dime, but we, you know, you can't, you know, if you look back a couple of years, you say, okay, well, we started doing this differently back then, or, you know, adding a new service to patients or something like that. So I thought it was really helpful. I learned a good bit, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, for your challenges with such a mature nonprofit foundation for hospital art, I find it fascinating that you actually, probably during your tenure, you actually flipped the business model from donations to corporate team building opportunities. And I'm not really sure what the percent of revenue is from donations to the corporate team building opportunities, but it just is marvelous that you can convince a major corporation to pay me to bring in painting supplies and canvas and let you paint by numbers, and it's a team building opportunity for you. And believe it or not, when you do it, it is super team building. And then to pivot to like the Van Gogh line and the other things that you're doing, like when I go on the website, I'm always surprised that you have a new line of art. And so the way that you've created innovation internally, and I believe it would be climate down here in Sun Tzu, you have a culture of innovation, because I believe you have staff and board members that bring you innovative ideas, and then you're open to it, and that's your leadership. You're open to new ideas. So I see, like, and that's just a fraction of me knowing just a little bit of your organization, and I'm sure you could do a whole vignette on how you've been adaptive and resilient and really pivoted for the time. So thanks for always being a part of this group in this intellectual endeavor.
Yeah, I always one of the is, everybody knows you wear many hats, but one of them that is really understated is I call it the NPI, or new product introduction, or NPI. There's different acronyms for it, but you know, constantly trying to reinvent yourselves. And the other piece of it too, I think, is the importance of having and developing a variety of services, so that when the economy changes or different things happen, if one area is struggling for support, you have another that you can, you know, move into and help kind of even out the bumps in the road to kind of make it a little bit smoother. And that takes a lot of time, but It's there's value in doing that.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Was there any other comments? Jeremiah, I didn't want to leave you out if you had a closing comment, and Roy, I'd love for you to close as well.
I'll let Roy go first.
Yeah. All right. I just would like to, just close with saying, I don't think you should let strategy be something that's hard. I'm essentially a one-person nonprofit with, I have 5 other makers that make chairs for me, and I'm trying to figure out how to grow the organization. So I'm probably still in that kind of bootstrap phase and thinking about how to scale, but I still need a strategy because if I don't, I'll just be chasing the next good idea. In fact, somebody presented me with an idea today already, and I'm like, well, wait, let me take a step back. Is that aligned with what I want as an organization? Is it aligned with my strategy? And so it just gives me the guidepost to continue to push forward with what I want in preserving honor and preserving craft, which are my 2 big values, a big why of purpose. And so I think that's the value that I have would offer to other people, saying why strategy doesn't have to be hard. You just need to kind of a few hours of work on the back of a napkin, and you can have vision and have a pathway forward. So that's all I got.
Cool. The one thing that I'll share with you is that for many years, I used to be a financial advisor for Edward Jones. And I remember all the time sitting with clients one-on-one, and I'd say, well, what is your long-term strategy? And I swear, at least half the time, most of the people are rolling their eyes like, oh my God, here we go again. Diversification. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Now we got to talk about long-term strategy. But I used to reel them in and really do all these different things and really ask them honestly, what really matters to you in your life long term? Like, what is the things that keep you awake at night, or what are the things that puts a smile on your face? And for a nonprofit that's passionate about helping the community, we all have that passion of why we started it. And if we start a long-term plan and start with long-term strategy, I just really feel adamant that it is the way that you can continue down the path in the right direction. Now, that doesn't mean like when I was a financial advisor that, oh, all of a sudden, like, my son got a divorce. Now I need some money and, my financial plan is all, or I lost my job or whatever might happen. Yes, there's things that are going to happen in your organization where you feel like you're kind of getting off the path a little bit. And you got to fix it. You got to take care of it. But once you pull off to the side of the road and change that tire, you can get back on the road again. And also, just because you put down on paper a long-term strategy does not mean that you can't change and evolve it. Again, it's just a good path, and I just think that every organization at some level needs to do this sooner than later.
Thank you, Jeremiah. Yeah, creating a visual strategy is really going to align action and really make you ready for a changing environment. And that's really, do you have a visual that you can tell someone in one page what is it you do? So that's really what this is about, is making it practical. And so thanks for your time today. And we're going to post this in the community and look for more dialogue out there. And if you want to talk about this one-on-one, please reach out, send me an email, and we'll get you scheduled for a 30-minute session for sure, if not more, to really dig into your own issues. So thanks. Our next Nonprofit Leader Circle is April 24th, and we have Scott Fight talking about board development, board expansion. And Bill Phillips, you do not want to miss that because it's some good slides, and he's an expert. So look forward to seeing you in that Nonprofit Leader Circle in just 9 days. So take care, guys. Got to turn off everything before I exit out.
Uh,
All right.
it's good.
Good. Talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.